Hello, welcome to the Bluff Books podcast. This is #BluffBooks, the show that's all about building, leading, and understanding financial freedom. So whether you're an average Joe seeking financial well-being and independence, or a fiduciary advisor who seeks to connect with average Joe, thank you for joining me on this show as we discuss books relating to the topic of financial literacy. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can continue to enjoy a new episode with me every week. I'm your host, Ian Gates, a former Spanish teacher and U.S. Army intelligence officer, but now I'm an aspiring financial advisor because as a teacher and an intel officer, my soldiers and my students constantly had financial questions, and when they'd ask me, I'd have to say, I don't know, I have to look that up too. And so the show's name comes from the military acronym BLUF, which stands for Bottom Line Up Front. It means that here I seek to always present the most important information right at the start in the clearest, most engaging way possible. Like my hero LeVar Burton of Reading Rainbow fame, my goal is to encourage a love of reading, and for this show to be a springboard, not a stopping point for your engagement with these texts. And please remember, this is a radio show, so we can only discuss concepts in terms of general truths and tendencies. It is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. Thank you, and let's start the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Bluff Books podcast. And today, my guest is David Delisle, the author of The Golden Quest, which was illustrated by Travis Hanson. It's a graphic novel, and it's a great way to introduce your kids to the big ideas of financial planning and well-being. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Ian. I'm so excited to be here. This will be a good call.
Oh, definitely. And I have to say, your book was a great surprise at the FinCon 23 conference back in October. I love graphic novels. I love comic books. I learned to read because of Calvin and Hobbes and my parents' choice to stop reading them to me and said, no, you figure it out, kid. But that format is so unique, and it's also so helpful, right, for the material. And you have 4 big rules in the book that your hero goes to and learns. But can you tell me how you got to the point of deciding that this would be the format you try to teach these lessons in?
Yeah, well, I love that you mentioned Calvin and Hobbes, because that definitely was a bit of an inspiration for me as well. Because I love, like I say children's book just so people grasp what I'm talking about and understand that I try to simplify it so kids can understand it. But in the same way, if you think of like Calvin and Hobbes and Dr. Seuss or Winnie the Pooh, where they could take these complex ideas and simplify them, that's what I was trying to do, and not write it so it's actually only for kids. It's written for adults in the same way Calvin and Hobbes is. And for me, it was really being at my children's library where I was volunteering, watching the kids read, talking to the librarian, and hearing all the kids constantly just wanting to check out graphic novels and being told they can't because that's what they wanted to read. And that's what's so fun and accessible for kids. And it was almost like this light bulb moment where I was like, I could take something like financial literacy that outside of like a few of us that go to FinCon and just love talking about this stuff, most people don't love. And I was like, how do I make this so it's enjoyable? So for me, when I hear kids who have read the book, 7, 8 times, 10 times, they keep reading the book, young kids, it just means so much to me because this is a book on financial literacy. And if we can get young kids enjoying it and finding it a fun story and learning these concepts because they want to, I mean, that's really incredible.
Yeah, and how did you find your collaborator? Because the art is stellar, and it reminds me a little bit of Legend of Zelda in the tone and the style, along with a bit of that Pilgrim's Progress narrative.
Yeah, it definitely, that was something that took me a while to find. And I was really lucky to come across Travis because his artwork's just beautiful. And he's done quite a few things with D&D as well and monster manuals. And so I really just liked the style. So I found the style first, then I reached out to the illustrator and talked about this project. And luckily he was on board because he was extremely busy. And so because of that, this was a bit of a long process for both of us just to find the time to make it all happen. But I knew that that was who I wanted to work with and the artwork that I wanted to have in the book.
Yeah, that is really neat. And, as you bring up these 4 big ideas in the book, something that I thought was especially neat was kind of getting into the subtext, because the mark of a great story or a classic is it keeps talking to you, and there are layers in it. And the first big idea I wanted to get your thoughts on was the idea of how one good referral begets another. Because story's about a boy, he's journeying from magical kingdom to magical kingdom, learning lessons, and it just made me think of my own life. When I found a good lawyer friend, I would ask him, like, hey, do you know somebody who specializes in estate law? Like, oh, that's not me, but my friend Bob is really good at that. He can get your will done. Or just asking my father-in-law, like, hey, what should I look for in a good plumber? And he's been in the business 30 years. Yeah, if he uses X, run away.
Yeah, no, I really did want to sort of have it be this epic adventure and this journey. So even the book itself is The Golden Quest. The subtitle is Your Journey to a Richer Life. And keep it this idea that it is a journey and it's learning and being open. Because I think it's too often when we think of things like, especially finance and money, that there's, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And that's what we're all trying to get to. And realizing that that's not actually the case. It's the journey itself that the magic happens. And there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's all a journey. And so the child finds himself on this journey, and every person has one more thing to tell him. And then it goes full circle where then he's encouraged to pass on this knowledge himself and send his children on a similar quest. So I think, we're a species that really is, a community, and we do better in community, and we do better when we have other people's ideas and other influences and other perspectives. So I did really want to show that and show that diversity in the characters as well. They're not all the same style or type of character, and they all have their different sort of lessons they want to pass on in their own way.
Yeah, and having a family, having a social network, the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, or it takes a multiverse of magical kingdoms to raise a child. I thought that was really neat. Again, teaching their son to try to go to the source, not try to expect their parent to be the answer to all problems. And that brings me on to the second subtextual idea that really jumped out to me in the text, was the idea of raising free-range children. And for me, I grew up in the 90s, and I remember there was a bit of an obsession with self-esteem and participation trophies, and there was also quite a bit of a shift from I remember the very last of the Stranger Things type generation, where it was normal for a kid to piddle around the neighborhood for 6 hours after school, and parents not to worry until they didn't come home around midnight. And so there are extremes, but definitely letting him have a skinned knee childhood, letting him test his own limits and make some mistakes. I think that's such an important thing to empower our kids with.
For sure. We've lost some of that. And just quickly, I love that you're picking up all the subtext, because I try to layer a lot of these things into the book for exactly that same reason. The same way, every time you pick up like a Calvin and Hobbes, you read it a little bit differently depending on what stage of life you're in or what's going on. And that is important. Is really, it comes down to, for me, autonomy and feeling empowered. So even a lot of the lessons, one of my main lessons in the book is all around this idea of awesome stuff. And we don't have to get into the details, but really it's around empowerment and choice. So rather than feeling like, you have no autonomy and the world's dictating what it's going to do to you, you take ownership. In the same way as the young boy, he's not, told what to do or how he should do things. He takes it upon himself to go on this adventure and learn these lessons himself. And even the lessons, the way he interprets them and how he picks them up, it's all up to him. There isn't do this and you'll be fine. These are just words of wisdom imparted. And we've lost a bit of that. And I think we've lost some of that with fear, but it's one of those things where it is so magical as a child, feeling like you can make some of your own decisions and you're capable and you can do it yourself. And obviously as the kids get older and depending on the situation, that's going to change. But these are lessons we want our adults to have. So it's crazy to me to start the lesson when they're in their 20s and then expect them to step out in the world and know how to thrive when all the way through their childhood, they didn't have those many opportunities. And again, back to that concept of journey. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that slowly evolves and builds. And so I try to encourage my young boys to do the same.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about it too, though, is that the parents are not sending their son to strangers. They're sending him on a route they've walked themselves, or at least his father has, to people his father has met, and then eventually our hero sends his daughter on the same journey. So there is this aspect of keeping kids in their stretch zone, kind of the difference between distress and eustress and atrophy. Like, how do we live in the place that keeps things interesting and pushes us without breaking us? And, testing limits is what has to happen for you to even know where they are.
For sure. And the whole quest is about learning. And the boy's on his own hero's journey and learning. And as we know, we don't grow and learn without pushing and getting past some discomfort. That's the whole thing. Like, growth itself is painful almost in just the description of what it is. It's change, and change is always a little bit uncomfortable. So being open to that change and being able to grow and experience and know that you're capable. Like, they're great lessons. And again, it's just a subtext in the book, but it's there. And I think that's probably why some of the young kids love it so much and they'll read it again, because they're on this journey as well. And on the journey, their young dog, the boy's young dog, Shelby, he's with him the whole way. And so you feel a bit of that safety because the dog's there to, keep him company, keep him on the right path and make sure things are okay. And I think young kids can really get behind that and get excited because they want to go on their own adventures.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I love about the narrative as well is that it is a series of lessons that are passed down from generation to generation. And the focus is on generational wealth, first and foremost, in terms of character and identity and moral, intellectual values, not physical stuff. And the idea that coming home to his family is the most important moment in the story, I would argue. If you love something, let it free. And again, you don't know who you love until it's hard to see them.
For sure. And I also wanted to show in that moment that the boy who left on the journey was not the same person as the boy who came back from the journey. I wanted to show that this boy had changed and these lessons had landed and he had changed, and the way he viewed the world had changed. The way he viewed his family had changed. And you can sort of feel that appreciation and that shift and see how that only would have happened by going on this big journey. If it was just one of these things where, he was just told over, evening dinner by his parents, here's some lessons we're going to pass on to you. Now be a new person tomorrow when you wake up. It wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, I love that saying that, if you tell me and I will hear all of me and I will learn. Kids see the behavior their parents model. Kids need to walk the walk and try on those things for size, not just take somebody's word for it that this will fit them. And definitely in financial planning, and I'm a relative beginner in that profession, but so often you see people for whom an inheritance or a windfall is a curse, in that they get this mountain of money, but they don't know what to do with it. And I would compare it to a bomb in some ways. Like, all of a sudden they have the ability to make a crater of their lives where they didn't before.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And that's why the first lesson is all based around mindset. Because when we think about money, we typically think about how to have more. And we're stuck in this cycle of, if I only had X, if I only had $1 million more, if I only had $10 million more, if I only had $100 million more, we keep moving the bar and chasing this perceived happiness if we just had more. But more for what? And that's really important. Asking why. What do you want? What's important to you? And so to hand over this windfall, as you said, without actually understanding what's important to you, it can easily make your life worse because you don't know what to do with the money. And you might start creating a lifestyle that isn't yours or isn't sustainable. And then, as you said, it becomes a curse. And so it's really important for me to make sure people understand what is their why, what lights them up, what's important to them. And without that knowledge, it doesn't matter how much money they have, they'll always be chasing. And having that why will shift everything. And so, yeah, it is really important. And at the same time, that's what people think they want. The young boy, when he starts the journey, that's what he's looking for, is this windfall. When I go and talk to young classes, I'll be in a kindergarten class, and these are kindergartners. They want for nothing in most cases, or at the very least, they're not the ones paying for anything. And if I ask them if they want $1 million, they light up and they all get excited and they all want $1 million, all these kindergartners. And then I'll ask them for what? Like, what do you want the $1 million for? And they don't know. They just think everyone should want $1 million. You'd be crazy not to. But they have no concept of money or what's really important to them. And what they think $1 million will buy or what they want to buy with it is so interesting. Because once you start asking that question, then it's a completely different conversation. What would you like to do? What do you want more of? What's your favorite thing? What's your favorite experience? What's your favorite thing? What would you like to, buy for your friends? It changes. But $1 million, yeah, these kindergartners all would like that and not actually even understand why. Definitely.
And one thing I'm very excited to see is what projects you're going to undertake in the future. Do you have anything in the pipeline?
So it's funny. Everyone, I think that's the curse of all authors. The moment they finally get their book out in the world, the first thing everyone asks, when's the next book? And it is a thing. And we do have this need to keep chasing. I do really want to get some of this message out because it's so important. Like, it's even just right now, like, we didn't talk about the meat of the book. We just talked about the subtext, and already you can see how many layers there are there. And it's not just for a 5-year-old, even though a 5-year-old could pick it up and read it. And so I do want to get some of that message out and focus on that. But for me, I do have some ideas. A lot of it for me is awareness and just seeing the world different. And not that you should see the world different or do anything different, just being aware of different perspectives. So I do have some ideas around, teaching young kids just mindfulness and appreciation and gratitude, but in a way where I take all those buzzwords out that they don't want to hear and just show it to them through images and photos and pictures.
Was it Mary Poppins said, a spoonful of sugar?
Yeah. Yeah. Make it fun.
Absolutely. And on building, leading, understanding financial freedom, your book also reminded me in a lot of ways of Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez, granted for a different level, but they talk a lot about, where do you set your finish line? What are you spending your life energy on? And one thing that's not explicitly mentioned in this book, but I would be interested to see a similar treatment of, is the idea of forget you money. The idea that, do you want to have more toys, or do you want the ability to both move towards good things, but also have the ability to say no to bad things? Because, if your job is crushing your soul, if your boss is harassing you or maybe pushing you to do something illegal or unethical, but you're cornered into wondering whether you can feed your kids this month if you quit. And that's a very real concern for a lot of Americans.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Vicki was trying to, that's what they were trying to talk about in that book, Your Money or Your Life, is just, it's this extreme idea of what is that money that you're chasing and spending things on costing you? And if it's costing you all the time of your life doing a job you hate, that's not for anyone. And so it's been important to me with this book. So they really want to get to a point where people could start understanding this, understanding the cost of the things they're buying. It doesn't mean don't buy them, just understand the cost of them so that you can make a decision whether that cost is something you're willing to spend money on or not. Because usually that cost is your life, your time, your effort, your work. And so understanding that and making a different decision, not for everybody, but many, creating financial freedom so they can have more choices and have, like you said, that little extra so they don't have to do a job they don't like. They can take a sabbatical. They can help a loved one if they're sick and take the time off. Those things are typically most important to many people if they really thought about it. But if we don't think about it and we just see what we see on TV and commercials and what comes in, we get excited about the next thing instead. And I know they dedicate their lives to trying to hit that tipping point to get this message out there. And it was always tricky. And I've always felt it was tricky because we're trying to change the mindset of adults. And so I'm trying to do the same thing, but with kids, where I think we can actually hit that tipping point and influence an entire generation. So the way they think about money and what it means to live a rich life is different.
Thank you again, David, for that excellent recap. And I really appreciate you coming on the show today. It's been a delight talking to you, and I'm excited to see who gets to enjoy the book and the libraries it's going to be on the shelves of. And I've already got my copy, and I'm going to read it to my kids as soon as they're ready.
I love that. Thanks so much for having me here, Ian. And again, if anyone wants to learn more, I mean, everything's based on this concept of what's important to you, the awesome stuff. So if you want to find me on my website's The Awesome Stuff, and TikTok, Instagram, it's The Awesome Stuff. And I'd love to hear from people, love to hear what your kids think when they're older. And I mean, for me, it's something I'm definitely passionate about.
Yes, indeed. And I think you mentioned in the book, the Abe Lincoln quote, you teach the kids, you'll get to the adults.
Yeah, exactly. Teach the kids so you don't have to teach the adults. And that's exactly it. I mean, kids learn faster. They're more open and they're less cynical and jaded and stuck in their beliefs. So yeah, if we can encourage the kids, and again, I mean, any money nerds listening in, compound growth comes into play with that as well. I mean, starting early is going to have a much bigger impact in your life.
Absolutely. Bunnies making bunnies making bunnies.
Thanks so much, Ian.
Take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Bluff Books podcast. We look forward to you joining us again as we continue to explore the world of finance, investing, and wealth building by reading new and classic books pertaining to financial literacy. And please remember, this is a radio show, so it's for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. But if you need financial advice that is relevant to your unique personal situation, please consider hiring a certified financial planner who works on a fee-only basis. The big ideas I cite here from the books are based on my interpretation of the texts, and I look forward to hearing from you and engaging with you on your thoughts and recommendations. You can best reach me by joining the #BluffBooks group on LinkedIn or emailing me at ian.gates12@outlook.com. And remember, here at #BluffBooks, we cite sources, keep it brief, treat others with respect, use humor, promote freedom, and of course, don't bury the lead. Take care, guys.